I would probably keep the speaker off though, if you're watching it
Yeah, true.
on Facebook.
So, yeah, well, welcome everybody that is
I
joining
would
us.
probably keep the speaker off though, if you're watching it. Oh,
Yeah, true.
on Facebook.
Yeah, well, welcome everybody that. All right. So what we've learned about streaming to Facebook Live is that there's a nice delay, major delay, which is probably good. But so anywho, I just want to welcome everybody to our very first, we're calling it the Grisak Town Hall. We got some really good questions just as far as what's happening in the market. What does it mean to sell a house? What does it mean to buy? You know, how are interest rates impacting the market? So some pretty interesting things. So welcome everyone. My name is Erin Hickman. I am the Senior VP for the Grisak Group and also the Director of Sales. And I'm happy to be here. So I just want to all of our agents to unmute if you can and just introduce yourself really quickly.
I'm Tom Grisak. Happy to be here.
I'm Wendy Splon.
Heather Polar.
Sean Elliott.
Courtney Pugh.
Christy Zemeyer.
Alice Robison.
Sarah Haskins.
I'm going to unmute myself. Anyway, thanks guys for the introductions. And again, I just want to thank everyone that sent in some really good questions. And I'm going to go ahead and start going through some of those. Okay. Let's see. Someone typed in and said, I keep hearing that homes are selling for over list price. Does that mean that agents are underpricing them? And why are they not starting those prices higher?
I'll take that, Erin.
Okay.
That's a good question. And I can see how people would think that. And I would too if I wasn't on this side of the business. What we try to do is a strategy. In the old days, you had to try to figure out, okay, what do you think is the most we can get for this home? And then we would have to price the home within a certain percentage of where we thought that home would sell. Those days are kind of out the window. It's probably easier to price a home now than it ever has been, because we don't have to guess what that top price is going to be. We're probably going to know within, a week to 2 weeks when these homes are selling so quickly, the market's going to tell us where it should be. So the risk we have by starting too high and trying to hit that home run and we don't hit it is then we have to have a price reduction. And the agents are going to, and buyers are going to think, a price reduction in a market like this, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with the home? Or was the home just overpriced? So we don't like to do that. We like to price it, which we consider fairly, and the market comparables will support, and then get it out there, market it professionally, just like we always do, and rely on the buyers to determine where that price will be. And if you get into a multi-offer situation, kind of like an auction, people, if they really want it, they're going to bid higher, and that's our job as listing agents. So that I can't speak for other agents, but that's our strategy and why we do it.
All right, thanks, Tom. Sean, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, just to build off of it, he's absolutely right. Some of the strongest sales prices we've seen this year have been from multiple offer situations, from multiple bidders going after the home at the same time. So the downside of pricing too high is you really eliminate your opportunity to be in that situation. So you really want to price it where it makes sense. It's in the general range of the comps, obviously near the upper end if you can get it there, but you want to draw in buyers to get in those multiple bid situations because those are bringing the highest sales prices this year.
Okay, great feedback. And Sean, another question that I think you'd be great to answer. Someone asked, do I need to do any, improvements or any work on my home, before, just to get it ready to sell?
No, common question and a good one. It's not a perfect answer because there are so many variables in this, but I will say in general, the answer is usually no. sellers that try to update a home, improve a home for what they think a buyer is going to eventually like, they're usually chasing money. No matter what the improvement is, it's usually not a dollar-to-dollar return. So if you put in a $100,000 pool, immediately you go to sell it, it's maybe worth $50,000, $70,000, whatever the case might be. So I would never recommend somebody trying to improve the home in a way they think a buyer is going to like it, because the money just doesn't really make sense to invest that way. That said, there are certainly situations where it is important to do it. And I had one recently. We've got a seller coming up in McKinney who his front lawn is just toasted. And he said, should I spend a couple grand to redo the sod in the front? And my answer is absolutely yes, 100%. That is the first thing people are going to see when they come up to the house. Curb appeal is massively important. So for something like that, where it's kind of a minimal cost, but we know it's going to have a big impact on people's perception of the home, it's more than likely money well spent.
I think I get that question a lot too about carpet. Should I replace the carpet? And in general, I think we say, no, it's not necessary, because most people are going to put in their new carpet. However, if your carpet is ripped up, if there's lots of stains on it, if it is an eyesore when you walk in and it's the first thing that distracts you from looking at the house because you're staring at the carpet, then I would recommend replacing.
Okay, Tom, did you want to add something?
We are very cognizant about asking sellers to spend money on a home that they're trying to sell. We know it's easy for an agent to make a recommendation, and if the seller trusts them, they just do it. But when we walk through homes, we kind of, although we're looking at all the beautiful features, we're looking at potential objections that might come up. And if it's a potential objection that can be cured with a reasonable amount of money, you might as well do it then, because it'll come up later. The way I look at it, roof, walls, and foundation, those are the big three. I think those should always be, anything safety related, roof, walls, and foundation should be really addressed before the home is put on the market. If it's cosmetic, that's kind of iffy, yes or no. And then it comes down to how much money are you willing to put into the home that might get you that extra, if there's one or two things that may not be looking great and everything else is fantastic, maybe you want to go and spend $4,000 or $5,000 just to make no objections to that entire home. But every home is different. Every situation is different.
That's a good point, Tom. And one thing I was just thinking about, and I'm going to talk to Sarah Haskins, who's on here and one of our newer members on the team, and we're so happy to have her. She's also an interior designer. And so, Sarah, do you want to touch on kind of the importance of maybe not big improvements in the home, but how can you, zhuzh up a home to make it appealing for buyers to come in?
Well, I think staging is hugely beneficial for the seller, but also for the buyer. For the seller, it just helps you showcase your home in the best possible light. It helps with decluttering, depersonalization, just really gives you a great benefit when buyers are coming through, that your house is going to look as good as it possibly can. And then on the buyer side, it also helps them envision how they would set up their furniture or where they would hang artwork, or it's just a huge benefit for both sides.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, so many homes that we sell, they're gorgeous. And when they're staged really well, it just kind of shows the overall lifestyle that you're going to have in that home. Tom, what did you want to say?
Sarah, I think some people might be confused what staging really means. They may think it's taking out the furniture, putting in all new furniture, or doing, major things to the home. But we're really not. Usually when we're talking about staging, it's well, Heather, give some examples that you've had that have worked for you well on your homes.
Well, I think that we try to focus on a staging consult, and that's what we typically tell our clients. We will do the staging consult and just kind of explain, give recommendations and things that you can do, because what we always try to make sure everybody is aware of is that 90%, and every statistic is legitimate, of people are looking at homes on their phone. So I'm actually looking at my background. This is a perfect example of where I should have probably staged, because my background at the moment, there's just so much going on that it's distracting. And so I think that is the same in a house. I mean, if you walk into a home and there's just so much going on, you're not really looking at the bones of the house. You're distracted by what is in there. So we just want to make sure the pieces that are in there, the furniture that is in there, are showing the home and reflecting it in the best possible light. But also it kind of gives people an idea of, oh, my couch would fit here. Oh, a king bed does fit in this room. There's where the end tables would go. This is where I could set the couches. So I think it lets people visualize. If you're like me, I don't visualize very well. I need to actually see it. But it also kind of you want to just make sure that the furniture is almost like an accessory to the home in the most positive way possible.
But
Yeah,
staging, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
I was showing homes in Dallas this past weekend, and gorgeous homes in the Preston Hollow area. And one of the homes, it was beautiful on the outside, and actually the inside was gorgeous too, with cabinetry and moldings and trims. But it was so personalized, with personal effects, that it felt like, it almost felt as if the sellers were just trying to test the market to see if they could sell their home, because there wasn't a big effort taken to, put clutter away, organize things, take personal things down. So anyway, it does it makes a significant difference. Oh, Christy.
You can almost feel like you're imposing on them. One of the reasons we neutralize a house is because we want someone to walk in there and think, oh, I could live here. I could raise my family here. My kids, this could be my kids' room. But if it's so clearly somebody else's room, you almost feel like you're imposing on them. It's not as welcoming.
Yeah, true. Christy, what did you want to say?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think yeah, exactly, Heather. A big part of the process, a lot of the work of the listing process, of things that need to happen prior to even going on the market, and staging and prepping the home and paring down on items to, taking down photos and souvenirs or anything that makes it personal to you, to neutralize the home as much as possible, and declutter things. If your house feels empty to you when you go on the market, that's a good thing, because the reality is the way we all live is not the way our home is when we go to sell our house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very true. Oh, we have lots of hands that are raised. Who should I start with? How about Sean?
Everything y'all said is perfect and absolutely right. And one thing that I was just thinking while y'all were talking, and we say this with frequency, is people think rationally, they think based off of fact, but they make decisions based off of emotion. So when we stage our homes, when we prepare them for somebody else to walk through and see their things and their family in there, it really does come down to, we want to make the best emotional experience we can when they're walking through the house, and staging is just a huge part of that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Tom?
I was going to make the point that we stage all of our homes. So very rarely we can walk in and see a home we just had one the other day that we really couldn't think of anything that did need to be staged, but it's worth it to us. We spend money on the front end to make that home really look special when people see it. And staging, I don't know what staging costs us, $150, something like that, but it's worth it to us to spend that extra money to help that seller get the best price we can for their home.
Absolutely. Think about when you walk in a department store, that there's merchandising involved with all the products, and, so that's appealing. It's what's going to draw you in to purchase something. So another good, just moving on from this topic, which was helpful. Another really good question was, speaking of sellers, there are a lot of people out there that I think would sell. They're just not sure where they can go, because obviously the housing market the inventory is still very tight. And when homes do go on the market, they sell so quickly. So somebody says, maybe I'd sell, but I don't know where I'd go. I don't want to be homeless. What should I do? Alice Robinson, why don't you take that one? Hey, girl, you gotta unmute
I
your.
will take that one. That is actually a very common question that we get from a lot of people that come and say that exact thing to me. I want to sell my home, but I'm so nervous. I want to take advantage of this market, but where the heck am I going to go? And in reality, most homes, once you're under contract, you have 30 days in most cases around that before you close. And then we can also negotiate what's called a lease back for you, where you then become a tenant in your own home and the buyer is your landlord now because they own the home, and we can negotiate a 30 to 60 day lease back. So if you get a 60-day lease back plus that 30 days between contract to close, that's a quarter of a year that we have to find you a home, and we won't leave you homeless. And there's always the option to put you in a rental temporarily if need be, but hopefully during that 90-day period, we can get you in a home.
I'm muted. Oh, the follies of doing live Facebook and Zooms. Hi, Sean. I see your little hand in the corner.
Just so many good things to talk about. No, Alice is totally right. And this is the most common question because it is obviously a concern. I know everybody that's looking to sell their house, they're very concerned about where the next step is. But the simple fact is people are doing it all the time. There are people right now that are putting their home out on the market and they're going and finding the next thing. So I think this perception has been created that it's almost impossible to do this. And you might as well stay put because there's nothing out there. I promise people that are watching this, that is not the case. It is possible. With our help, we can obviously make the path there a little bit easier. But like Alice said, with a 30-day closing period and then potentially a pretty long lease back, there really is quite a bit of good lag time to figure out what comes next.
Very good. And for somebody watching, I did have somebody ask me recently, they said, what does a seller lease back mean? I mean, I know it's easy for us. We do this every day, but who wants to answer what a lease back is?
I will.
Go ahead, Wendy.
A lease back is just once it's closed and funded, then you become the tenant and the person that bought your house becomes the landlord, and you basically lease the house back from them for that amount of time until you find something, else, or while you're packing up, or, used to be in the day, you would close, in 30 days and you had to be out in 30 days. But these days sellers are, getting, extra lease back time to stay in their home while they find out where they're going.
Hey, Wendy, somebody also asked a question, how do you make your offers stand out in this market? And I know you work with a lot of buyers. What are you seeing, and what's been your experience the past few months?
Well, I think it doesn't have to, I know a lot of people think it has to be a cash offer. It doesn't. I've gotten plenty of offers executed that were not cash and we're up against cash. I think obviously sales price is the most important. If you can, pay for the title for the sellers, pay money towards the HOA resale certificates and transfer fees. If you can lower your days on your financing to maybe 10 or less, or, a lot less than that, even kind of just almost becomes cash at that point. Lower your option days to get your inspection done to maybe like 3 days or 2 days. And just have the offer be really clean. Like, don't ask for extra furniture or extra things. Don't ask for home warranties. And, I know it feels like the buyers, what people are like, well, what do I get? The seller gets everything. I'm like, well, you might get the house. Hopefully you will get the house.
You get a home. You get a home.
So it doesn't seem really like fair right now, but that's just until the market turns to be a buyer's market. Right now, the sellers can pretty much call the shots.
Yeah, interesting. Heather, what did you want to say?
Just to add to that, she's kind of saying it from the buyer's agent perspective, which is very valid for the buyers on here, but also for the listing agent side. We just want to make sure, unfortunately right now it is a seller's market, and you want to present your offer in a way that seller is leaning towards you regardless of other ones. And it's not always, like Wendy said it, cash offer doesn't always need to it's not always a cash offer that wins the deal. In fact, my last 2 listings we didn't take the cash offer. And there were a lot of reasons, there were terms in the offer that made that less attractive, even though the financial aspect of it was very good. There were terms in the offer that made it less attractive to the sellers. So a lot of times the agents will explain, you know, or they will tell you, these are the things that the seller wants. So as a buyer in the market, if you make sure that your agent is that they're advocating on your behalf, make sure your agent is working for you and that they're calling that listing agent and asking what is important to your seller. I mean, it may be a lease back that's more important to them than the most financially attractive offer. In fact, a lot of times that is exactly the case. Make sure you're pre-qualified. Don't just don't just get a pre-qualification letter. Let me rephrase. Actually go through the underwriting process, because as an agent, I'm a listing agent, if I see 5 offers and 2 of them have been pre-approved as opposed to the 20-minute pre-qualification, I'm more likely to look at these 2 more strongly, because our job as agents is not only to get a contract on the house, but our biggest job is to make sure we get to the closing table without any headaches for our sellers. So going through the pre-approval process, going through underwriting in advance, I mean, that can make your contract stand out and stronger than some of the others.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I just want to add too, for anybody watching this, if you are a buyer, if you don't win the offer on the house, if it's a multiple offer situation, I would really encourage you to submit a backup contract and be the backup in the event that offer number 1 falls out. Because I'm telling you, I represent more sellers too than I do buyers. And a lot of times, you know, we've all experienced it on this panel recently where, you know, a buyer comes in hot and heavy and super strong with really good terms. And then they wake up the next morning and they're like, oh my gosh, what have I just done? Like, I don't want to move forward with this. And so it gives somebody else an opportunity next in line to jump in. So Alice, what did you want to add?
Alice, you're muted. There you
Sorry,
go.
I was muted. Just to add on to what Heather was saying is that yes, that cash offer is attractive. It is going to get attention, but make sure that it's very easy if you're a conventional loan to be able to contact your bank, and so that we can vet these people out. And if you make that an easy thing for the seller to see and for the listing agent to have access to, so that they can vet this out, and you're a good offer as well, and you have been not only pre-qualified, but hey, here's the contact information for my lender, and make sure your lender picks up the phone when they call, and just make it that much easier on them to know this is legit. I am good. I'm not cash, but I am good for it.
Yeah. And a perfect example, a few weeks ago, we had a listing in McKinney and it was listed at $599. We had over 20 offers on that property. The offer that we closed was a loan, and the lender was able to close that loan within 2 weeks so it was a smooth process. Christy?
And the reason they were able to work so quickly is probably because that buyer was pre-approved. To hammer home, you know, what Heather was saying is, you know, if you're going to have your offer be contingent upon financing, chances are in this market, it will be competing probably against the cash offer, which isn't always going to win. But to have you take it a step further to be pre-approved instead of just pre-qualified makes you that much stronger with your financing contingency.
Yeah.
Why don't you explain the difference between pre-approval and pre-qualified, Christy?
So a pre-approval is when and anyone can do it. You can go online even, or just talk to your lender, and they ask you certain questions, and based on what you've told them, sometimes they'll go ahead and check your credit and stuff as well. But based on what you've told them, they then give a pre-qualification letter of, based on what you've told me, this is, you are pre-qualified to purchase such and such. To go a step further and get a pre-approval, you are then now have taken it a couple steps further with that lender. They have verified your income and assets. They've actually taken it to the underwriting department to where they can then close faster. They've already gone through multiple steps of the process with them to where they know that you're extremely qualified, being you're pre-approved, and they can just close faster because they're farther along in the process.
I had a case where I had a very good client of mine, and he was very wealthy, but the lender that I talked to didn't know who he was. I just told the lender, actually it was a mortgage broker. I said, this guy's very qualified. I said, could I get a pre-qual? And within 10 minutes, he sent me a pre-qual on him. It never talked to the guy, never, pre-qualification letters are about really the only thing a buyer agent can do on the front end, but they're really not worth the paper they're written on. So just be aware, if you're a seller, once you get that pre-qualification letter, that does not necessarily mean they are qualified to close on the home. And that's what Christy was alluding to. Going that extra step past pre-qual to pre-approved is a big deal.
Yeah, that's good. So somebody also, this was a really good question, and I know sometimes there's a lot of mystery around this, but somebody said, let me find it. I need my glasses on. Oh, what are these programs or these groups that will offer to buy my house? It seems too good to be true. What's the catch?
It's too good to be true.
It's too good to be true. Yeah. And I think, Courtney, you had some experience with this one, actually.
Yeah, I did. So I have personal experience with it, but I think the number one thing to keep in mind with these things they are a company. It's a business. And so they don't have your best interests in mind as a seller because they want to buy your house. My personal experience was before I was a realtor, my husband and I, we got an offer on our house from one of these iBuying programs, and it sounded great. And so we decided to go with their offer, and not realizing that all of their hidden fees. And so on top of their 5% fee, there's also closing costs. They'll reduce for repairs. There's just lots of different fees. The fees end up adding up anywhere from 7 to 14%, just depending on the program. So after they came and did their inspection on our house, they reduced by a lot because of repairs that needed to be done. It was an older home. So we backed out, and later on we decided to list with the realtor, and we knew those repairs needed to be made, but our realtor was able to negotiate with the buyer to split the costs with us. So she ended up netting us more than we would have gotten from one of those programs. It seems great on the surface, but then once they get into your house, there's just so many different things that could go wrong. And another thing with it is that agents can negotiate a lease back for you. With the buyer program, when you close, you have to be out within 3 days. So there's no lease back. You get your money and you've got to get out.
And that's risky too. That, going back to lease backs, you never as a seller ever want to sign a contract, sign an offer with you being required to be out of the home on the day of closing, because anything can happen on a deal. And I mean anything. On the last day before the closing, or on the day of the closing, one of the buyers could have some type of medical issue. They could go decide they're going to get a divorce. Anything can happen. So yeah, you might get that earnest money back, but that's not going to pay for your cost of already moving out of the house and then having to move back in and put it back on the market. So that's one thing we always do with our sellers, and it's kind of confusing to them. Why should I lease back a home I'm trying to sell? But that's why. It's to protect your interests. And I have had sellers that haven't done it, and it closed, but it never funded. So what happened is they moved out of the house, but the funding was held up for like a week. They didn't know if it would close. And fortunately, if it would fund, it did fund. So that's why leasebacks are so important from the seller's point of view.
Yeah, I think that's good. Does anybody have anything else to add to that?
I was just going to say a funny story that years ago, I had a client that was adamant that they did not want to lease back because they felt very weird about leasing back their own home. They were moving out of state. We were at the title company with their stuff in the U-Haul, everything had moved and closing got delayed. Because, you know, a million things can happen, and we try to bulletproof that as much as possible, but things can happen. And they had to go to the hotel for a couple of days because it was a Friday, and they had to stay here with their their U-Haul in a hotel locally so that they could close on Monday. So it's, you know, we're always encouraging it, but we just want, our whole goal is that we're trying to protect our clients. So, you know, it definitely makes things easier.
And we hope we can get your home closed on time, but there are no guarantees. We have no control over the lender. There is no penalty when lenders say, well, I can't get it done by Friday. We're looking at next week, Tuesday or Wednesday. That throws everybody into a panic, but there really isn't any type of recourse against the lender. They just said we couldn't put everything together. So you always have to be prepared for the worst, hope for the best, that it's going to close on time.
True. Very, very true. All right. Moving on to some other questions. I have one down here that talks about the difference between a mud and a PID. And I know a lot of those neighborhoods exist up in the Salina area. I've sold a few myself, but Wendy, do you want to take that one?
Sure. There is two differences. So a MUD is a municipal utility district, and it is for to add like electrical, water, like for when a development's going in, to, you know, fund all of that stuff, the sewer, the, you know, maybe streets, possibly things to go into that development or that infrastructure. And a MUD is money that is tacked on when you buy a house. It's tacked on with your taxes, and it never goes away. A MUD never goes away. It always stays with the house, no matter what. Now, a PID is different. It's for infrastructure to build like parks or parking lots or streets or different things within the community. And a PID is an additional assessment on top of your taxes every year, but it can be paid off. You may have like a balance of, say, you know, 20,000 or whatever. If you pay it off, then you don't have to keep paying every year, because every year it might increase just a little bit just because of inflation and everything. So if you pay it off, you don't have to, you know, do that. So
Seis Lagos, if you all know where Seis Lagos is, that's a MUD. They don't pay City of Lucas taxes. They have their own sewer system. They bring in their own water, totally different. And there are reasons why they want to stay that way. But sometimes MUD are absorbed into a city. Sometimes they're not. Seis Lagos will always probably be a MUD in my estimation.
And it used to be that it wasn't mandatory to disclose that. And I know lots of people that bought houses from builders out in this Prosper Salina area, mostly Salina, but did not have a clue that they were in a MUD or a PID until their first statement came, and they're like, or annual statement came on their taxes, and they're like, what's this? But now, as of, I think it was January of this year, we have to disclose it. And the buyer has to sign that they know that they're buying in a PID or a MUD, so that they can't be, you know,
no surprises.
No surprises, right?
Yeah.
That's not a fun. That would not be a fun surprise to get. That would not be good at all.
There was an agent one time. This is kind of interesting. That bought a home, and she lived in it for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. She never even realized she had a septic system. She always thought she was on. She always thought she was on a public sewer.
Wow.
But that was interesting for her to find out.
Yeah. Oh no.
Right. Yeah. Whoa. Let's see. Somebody also messaged in and had a question about Zillow. One of our favorite topics about
Zestimate.
Well, why is my list price not matching my Zestimate?
We all want that question. Who gets that one, Aaron?
I'm gonna give that to Miss Christy Z. Meyer.
Okay.
I'm sorry I'm shifting around, guys. Like, I'm sitting on my floor in the house that we just moved into, and I think I'm getting older and my legs just aren't meant to stay crossed that long. So
You're going numb? Don't
I'm
walk.
like this, shifting. So anyways,
Yeah.
sorry. Okay, we're
We're
going
not,
back
we're
to
not friends of Zillow. So go ahead, Christy.
Well,
Lay
this
into
is
it.
this is a great question. I think I don't even know how many times I've gotten this question. I think most everybody, you know, looks at Zillow at some point in time and looks at that Zestimate to see, just kind of have an idea of, you know, what is my home worth right now currently. You know, and Zestimate can, you know, Zillow can be a good tool to give you a somewhat rough estimate or idea of where you potentially fit into a market. Zillow's an algorithm. We all know it's a computer, and it's you know, they take comps or things that have sold immediately around you, and they do base, you know, calculate in their square footage and lot size and that kind of thing, to kind of spit out that, you know, computer algorithm number called the Zestimate. The reality is that Zillow hasn't been in your home. It hasn't been in any of the homes that it's comparing it to when it spits out that number. So, for example, let's say your backyard has this oasis, you know, beautiful landscaping, extensive landscaping, and this privacy that is valuable to buyers, that would add value to your home. Well, Zillow doesn't know that when it's comparing. But on the flip side, let's say the house down the street sold, and right before they put it on the market, they redid their kitchen, and you're not wanting to redo your kitchen prior to going on the market. So Zillow doesn't take any of that into consideration. So the reality is there's just a lot more that as your local expert, we know that goes into pricing the home than what that Zestimate you know, throws out there. And we see some big fluctuations in those numbers. I mean, sometimes they're just way off, you know, in either direction. Sometimes they say they're lower than really what your home is potentially worth, because none of this is taken into consideration with that number.
yeah, and then on it's interesting stuff how the algorithm works for sure. Does anybody have any other lovely comments about Zillow?
Well,
Yeah,
I'll say this. Go ahead,
Go
Sean.
ahead, Don. No,
We
go
spend a
ahead.
lot of our time cleaning up the mess that Zillow's created and explain to people that you really can't price a home from where they located, Palo Alto or someplace in California, Silicon Valley, I don't know. But that would be like me sitting here in Lucas pricing a home in Washington, D.C. You really can't do that. You have to know the neighborhood. Every home in a neighborhood isn't, you know, every square footage. If you're just going off square footage and amount of land, whether it has a pool or not, yeah, it's easy. Anybody can do that, but every home is different in the amount of interior finish out, the intangibles like a beautiful wooded lot or a very spectacular negative edge pool, things like that. That's what Zillow doesn't, I don't even know if they have realtors or brokers working for them. For a while they didn't, they may now, I don't know. But you can't really price a home by not walking through it and all the homes around it, like you said, Christy. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, no, and part of that will build off what you just said, especially working in Lovejoy, you know, with experience, you realize no two homes, no two lots are exactly alike. They're just intangible features of every single one. So that comes down to gut instinct and experience a lot, which Zillow obviously does not have for every single market. But I also think it's important that people realize when they're looking at this estimate that Zillow doesn't have access to all the sold data in the state of Texas. They just don't. Texas is a non-disclosure state. So when we look at our listings and we look at comps to actually determine what the list price is going to be, we have actual sold data. We know what a buyer literally paid for that home. Zillow doesn't have that information. And by their own estimation, there's a page somewhere on Zillow where they rank their ability to price homes by state. And by their own admission in the state of Texas, it's very, very low, that they can't say with significant accuracy what the market value of a home will be.
Yeah. If I give Zillow credit for anything, I think they really did change. You know, they brought a lot of cool technology to the forefront and kind of changed the whole, you know, buying experience, or really added on to it. So I'll give them some props for that. But you know, they are they come up in conversation every single day. And what's tough is when I've been working with buyers before and they'll actually send me Zillow links like, hey, I just saw this home. I love this house. And it says that it's available. And 9 times out of 10, those homes are not, they're not available. It's they're not even, they were maybe sold years past. So anywho, anything else to add on that before I move on?
Well, and again, Wendy, and I don't think we want to run down the rabbit hole, but Zillow also can have some really crazy stuff on there. I know, Wendy, you just had one where there was a lot listed on Zillow that was not even owned by the person that claimed that they owned it and they were trying to sell it fraudulently. I mean, there's some crazy stuff that can go down on Zillow.
Yeah, because they don't vet it. I mean, it was a fake seller. It was an actual lot, but the seller had IDs and stuff from people that lived in Frisco, and they actually lived out of state. And yeah, they don't vet them. They just put for sale by owner, just stick it out there.
And you actually wrote a contract on that property,
Under contract,
right?
yes. And the title company had to do some research on it because something seemed fishy, and they sent the contract to the people's house in Frisco, and they called them immediately and like, we are not selling this lot. This is not us, but it had the same names. They had IDs that matched theirs and everything. So yeah. And you would think that you just assume that Zillow would somehow could vet that, but I guess.
I don't know. You may want to jump on Zillow and make sure your house isn't listed there.
Exactly.
Unless you're selling it. Hey, Alice.
Well, while we're attacking Zillow, I had a client just week that sent me a house. It was a very nice house, and she said, this has been on Zillow 10 days. This excites me. Nobody else is putting offers in on it. And I look it up through MLS, and I said, oh no, that actually went active today. I don't know why Zillow's information is telling you that it's been on there for 10 days, but it got her hopes up. In this market, 10 days is a long time for a good home to sit. And she got her hopes up, and the house was under contract 2 days later.
Well, all right. Now we're going to move on from Zillow, our favorite people. Here's a fun topic we can talk about and kind of end our first town hall on is the interest rate discussion. And I think we all have seen the interest rates that are sitting around 5% today, close to, right? And what that means. And so, higher interest rates just means, it means less buying power. But wanted to see if anybody wanted to expand on kind of what the future market may look like with interest rates that are going up.
Yeah, I can take this one if you don't mind. One thing that we have heard is, so we work obviously for Keller Williams, and there are economists that actually work at our corporate headquarters that kind of watch the economy and what's going on with inflation and interest rates and all of that kind of good stuff. And so what they have predicted is that, in listening to the Fed's predictions as well, but they are thinking that we are going to hit 6% by the end of the year. So we're expecting another 2 to 3 increases before the end of 2022, and then potentially 2 or 3 increases in 2023. So I was curious about, what's the reason for this? The economy, it's been great for real estate. Of course, on the seller side, it's been tougher on the buyer side, but we've been selling a lot of units. And what the explanation that was given to me was, in a balanced market, we want to sell about 5.4 units nationally, 5.4 million units nationally. At the end of 2021, we were well above 6 million units, which causes a little bit of a deficit for several reasons. And as we know, in Texas, we're even having trouble keeping up with new construction and everything else. So they need almost the real estate world to slow down a little bit. We need to be back in a balanced market. So in order to do that, one of the things that the Fed is going to do is, just kind of slowly eke up rates, so that, you know, that will, some people will pause, they will hesitate to make a buying or selling decision because of the rate increase. Some people it won't affect. And, you know, it's interesting, in our market, we work with a lot of luxury clients. As you know, Tom and Aaron say all the time, we'll sell anything on dirt. So we sell, you know, $50,000 pieces of land up to $3 to $5 million properties. But, you know, knowing that the luxury market, I think, doesn't typically get affected quite as much, because a lot of these people come in with cash, or they pay the majority of their loan in cash. So they're not borrowing so much, the interest rate doesn't affect them. But a lot of first-time home buyers are, truthfully, I mean, I had to buy my house contingent on the sale of my old home. And I wish I could go, you know, pay cash for something, but I'm not in that position. So for a lot of people, a 1 or 2% increase on your interest rate is going to cause you to rethink your buying decision. So that's kind of the prediction for the next, you know, 18 months.
Yeah, and I did math today, because we purchased our home that we remodeled last June and had an interest rate of 2.75%, which is amazing.
Mhm.
So we financing $464,000 at, you know, 2.75%. That's a principal payment of, you know, almost $1,900 a month. You know, in today's market at 5%, that same loan amount would equate to about, you know, almost $2,500 a month. And so, you know, that's pretty significant, you know, $600 extra a month. So, you know, that's $7,200 a year. You guys know I like math, but anyway, Sean, what were you going to say?
Oh, I just love numbers. Thank you for that, Aaron. No, it brings up really 2 points in my mind. One, if this is correct, and I think it absolutely is, that with rising interest rates, that some buyers will be a little bit scared off. It's obviously going to limit their buying power a little bit. Our sellers who've been sitting on the fence, wondering when is the right time to do this, now might be the time. Because with these changes coming, and with these buyers having this fear, you know, in the foreground or in the forefront now, it really is a good time. Let's go ahead and capitalize on what we know is a hot market, because we really don't know what the next 6 months is going to bring. It could change quite a bit. And then the second thing is, I know that this is immediate and right in front of people, and it obviously impacts, you know, what they're able to spend on a home. But I also hope people keep in mind just the historical significance of this. A 5% interest rate is still pretty darn good. It really is. Even if it goes up to 6%, we're not looking at anything that people were facing in the 80s and 90s. So in the end, it's not going to be the end of the world, but it is going to have an impact, you know, over the next couple of years. And so sellers that are sitting on the fence thinking about it, I think now would be a really good time to go ahead and pull the trigger.
And Sean, would you real quickly, we discussed the inventory, available inventory right now and absorption. Can you share that with us?
So one of the things that we always measure is it's the absorption rate, and basically what that means is the month's supply of inventory that's on the market right now. And for the past 18 months, and including the first quarter of this year, in Collin County specifically, and we look at all North Texas, but Collin County is where we do the vast majority of our business. So the absorption rate is around a half of a month. So essentially what that means is, if nobody else put their house on the market starting today, in 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, half a month, there would be no homes left. So that's an extremely low number of homes on the market. A balanced market is around 6 months. And then anything less than that is kind of getting to a seller's market. So I'll be curious to see, you know, what the April numbers bring. I would imagine that absorption rate is going to go up a little bit, but time will tell. But right now, and it's been this way for a couple of years now, the months of inventory we have is extremely low.
Yeah, and I think you couple extremely low inventory and something that we heard at the Keller Williams conference earlier this year is just housing starts, you know, just, you know, constructing and building new homes. They're so behind. And then you add in, you know, supply shortage, you know, just trade shortage, all the other things, you know, that's going to take a long time to catch up. So I'm very interested to see how things shake out too over the next few months. But, we'll just do everything that we can to, ensure a smooth transaction for any client that we're working with. But did anybody have any closing comments, closing remarks?
I just want to remind people to look at our website because we do have the way the MLS works. We can't announce listings as soon as we get them signed. We have to go through a process. And we've got 4 great listings coming up that just check our website, grisak.com, Grisak, and you'll see those coming soon. You'll see them as soon as they hit the market. So great time to sell. Honestly, if you're a buyer, it's a little bit tougher. Being a buyer agent is extremely difficult right now. But if you're a seller, I honestly think there are a lot of sellers that are going to wish they hadn't taken advantage of it because we're spoiled right now. But it's not going to be like this forever.
True. And just as a reminder, we have obviously all of our amazing agents on here, but just a shout out to Miss Courtney, who is officing in our expansion office in the Rockwall Heath area. And we also have Wendy Splon and Sarah Haskins that are, doing a great job up in building our Salina and Prosper and that section of, Collin County out that direction. And obviously have a phenom, we're all well versed on Lovejoy, but I personally live in Richardson. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there that we can sell and help you anywhere, or we'll find somebody that can. Anything else, guys?
That's it for me.
Well,
Hey, we made it.
Thank you all.
thank you.
We made it through our first one. Whoever watched this, thank you so much.
Thank
Let
you.
us know.
Bye.
Yeah, let us know.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Good
you.
night.
Guys.